Hello YouTube, welcome back. In this video, I want to speak about the situation involving Ma'Khia Bryant that recently happened involving um, her foster parents, or her foster family, her biological family, and the cops that ultimately resulted in her losing her life at the hands of a police officer. And I'll give a very quick rundown of what happened. But I'm sure if you're watching this video, you probably already know. But long story short, there was some sort of a domestic disturbance, or maybe I shouldn't use domestic, but there was a disturbance at a household involving Ma'Khia Bryant, and Ma'Khia is probably a teenager around maybe 15, 16 years old, and she was essentially being attacked or accosted by some older women who are said to be around 29 to 30 years old. And Ma'Khia went into the house, she called the cops. Somehow, some way, she wound up getting out the house, and she had a knife, and she was coming at one of the girls who came there to attack her, and then the cops intervened, ultimately shooting her 4 times, and ultimately resulting in her losing her life over that. So I want to talk about sort of like the reaction that's going on within the community. And I know like a lot of people are kind of split on this, and as well, there are people who are frustrated and angry about how Ma'Khia is being treated in this situation. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to try to unpack. I probably can't unpack every single thing, but I want to unpack some of this at least. And the thing I hear in this conversation a lot is accountability, like the word accountability being reoccurring in this conversation. And it's like, I do believe that people should be held accountable for what they do, what they participate in, what they perpetuate. Yes, across the board, you do need to be held accountable, no matter where you come from, your walk of life, age, sex, gender, sexuality, race, whatever, right? People should be held accountable for what they do. I agree with the spirit of that. However, since when did the black community care about holding people accountable? Because this is the same community that defended R. Kelly and gave him cover for years. And I know somebody gonna come through and be like, well, these are different situations. And that's true, but I'm hearing accountability being thrown left, right, up, and down. So if we really are concerned about accountability, we should have to apply it across the board in the community, right? And also notice in that R. Kelly situation, people were able to come up with excuses to excuse what R. Kelly did, allegedly did, whatever. People were able to come up with excuses and ultimately putting it on the young girls involved. That's something that's a reoccurring theme too. Being able to push the blame on someone else, right? When convenient, and when it's convenient, and oftentimes when a black man is at fault, right? You know, especially if it's like a black man and then there's women involved, then it's like, okay, we can blame it on the women. If it's black men and other black men involved, then things start to get a little sticky, muddy, whatever you want to call it, a little more difficult to do. Now, if it's a black man and a white man, then blame it on the white man, right? But let me continue though. But yeah, so when does the community really care about accountability, right? And honestly, I feel like this is accountability is being used as the excuse not to have more advocacy for Micaiah, but really I think it is apathy disguised as accountability, right? For one reason or another, people are maybe don't feel like putting in the energy, put it in the effort, put it in the resources to advocate for Micaiah Bryant. They may feel like Micaiah Bryant may not be the best look for Black social justice advocacy, even though we, advocated for many of people who were not the best look, you know. But, um, I feel like that's at play, right? Where it's like we as the Black community, since we don't have like the resources, energy, effort, whatever, etc., to take on every single case that comes our way. We have to prioritize. And I think in this situation, Micaiah Bryant was one of those situations that didn't make the cut in terms of being prioritized. And it's like, why is that? And some people are going to be saying like, well, the way that things went down, she was at fault and we can't, it's her fault. It's her fault. And I'll say that Micaiah Bryant, she's not 100% innocent, I'll say, in this situation. But if we're going to be assigning accountability and responsibility and blame, there's enough to go across, this whole situation. There's enough of it to be assigned to a lot of people that were involved in this situation. Like, I believe the foster mother called two of her previous foster kids who were like 29 and 30 to come to her house because somebody did. Either the mother or like the daughter of the biological mother called. And why are, again, 29 and 30-year-old women coming to attack a 16-year-old girl, right? Also, who were the supervising adults at this time? Who was the person in charge at this time? Also, more importantly, and something that's being overlooked and it's flying under the radar, like Micaiah Bryant's biological father was involved in that situation as well. And I'm just thinking, why didn't he just get his daughter out of that situation? Forget about fighting these grown women. Just be like, you know what? We through with this. We ain't getting into this. You coming with me. Why didn't that happen? Or something similar to it. So her biological father is also, we can assign some accountability on him as well. And honestly, considering this whole situation, I'm going to assign the bulk of the accountability on him, or at least a good portion of it. Why? If he was there and he could show up for a fight, why is she even in foster care to begin with in that case? That's something that I'm wondering about and has come up in some of the comment sections of some people's videos as well, and in some live stream chats. If if Micaiah's biological father was able to come up and show up for this fight and kick a girl in the head, right? Why wasn't he able to show up and, gain full custody of Micaiah so that she wouldn't have to be involved in the foster care system to begin with, right? Yeah, that's a lot in itself. That's something that kind of needs to be focused on too. right? And again, I'll jump back to the prioritizing, black social justice cases and whatnot. And I think that black women cases involving black girls and black women with the police, with black men, even with non-black men, with non-black, etc. They don't seem to get prioritized as much as cases involving black boys, black young men, black men, etc. And you know, it's not to say that no black woman has ever received any sort of advocacy. Not to say that, but it's just like the reaction is different, and the concern and the amount of outrage doesn't seem to be as strong for some reason. And also, again, Micaiah was in foster care. Like, there's trauma that can be involved in being in the foster care system. I don't know how long she has been in the system, you know, but people want context. Well, we can give context to that too, and as well her living situation that she was in. We could give some context to that, but that's not the context that people are really asking for, to be real. They're looking for context that goes to support their stance against Micaiah, not to support Micaiah receiving some sort of advocacy, right? And also, this is a bit of a sidebar too, but y'all remember that situation that happened in New York a while ago where it was like one black girl being attacked by 15 black boys? Y'all remember that? That was caught on video as well. Whatever happened with that? We're talking about holding folks accountable. I don't really see the outrage and the battle cry when that happened. And people are going to say, that's different, it's different, everything's different. Yeah, right. It's different till it involves you, right? And also, it's like, again, where is the advocacy for kind of like black women in general? Again, not saying that it doesn't ever happen, but I mean, people going to cite like, oh, Breonna Taylor, people advocated for her. And yes, people did. But the thing is, and I've said this before, Breonna Taylor, that situation, it happened at the right time. Because to keep it real, the Breonna Taylor situation happened before George Floyd and before Ahmaud Arbery. But folks wasn't really checking for the situation for one reason or another. But when George Floyd's situation popped off, and plus Ahmaud Arbery too, they kind of added that in to kind of like the social justice black advocacy against the police and police brutality. And that, again, it happened, her situation happened at the right time, right? But her situation didn't spark an Ahmaud Arbery or a George Floyd type of reaction, right? Her situation was added to their situation to help push the social justice aspect of the situations involving Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. But it wasn't like that just by itself, though, right? And Breonna Taylor's murderers are scot-free, like out here just living their life. Like Ahmaud Arbery, like his murderers were at least put in jail, and of course we all know the situation that happened with Derek Chauvin, right? You know, And great for George Floyd's family for getting some justice. Definitely, I'm happy for them. I'm happy for black folks in general for getting some justice out here in these mean streets. Definitely. But I'll put it like this, though. I feel like two birds were killed with one stone. I felt like George Floyd was not a saint, and neither was Derek Chauvin. Both of them have rap sheets. Derek Chauvin has a rap sheet related to his police record as far as him acting as a cop. And George Floyd has a rap sheet related to him in criminality. Both of them have rap sheets. Both of them are not perfect. By any means, both of them are not saints. They have a history behind them of doing some very bad things. All right. So in that situation, George Floyd, low-key, probably got what he deserved, and Derek Chauvin got what he deserved. So essentially killing two birds with one stone. And also, again, there were adults in that situation. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent. But back to Ma'Khia's situation, though. There were adults in that situation, and none of the adults there were trying to de-escalate. From what I've seen from the footage, I did watch the footage from the police officer's body cam. I didn't want to, but I felt like if I'm going to be talking about this situation, then I should watch it. But I don't like to watch, things like that because it's weird because it's one thing when you're watching a movie or a TV show and you see someone lose their life. It's like, okay, it's just a TV show. It's just a movie. It's not real, right? It's just a simulation, right? But this is like a real life thing. And also some people are just using this as entertainment where it's like, no, like this is not like entertainment. This is a real situation where someone really lost their life. Like this is serious. And also after a while, you can become sort of numb to it too. And I don't want people to become numb to really anybody, but especially black people being murdered. Like that shouldn't be something that society becomes numb to, right? But yeah, there were supervising, or I don't even want to say supervising adults, but there were adults there. Why didn't any of the adults try to de-escalate this situation? Accountability, right? And also that situation was ratchet. Some just ghetto, extra ratchet. I'm talking about just the ratchet sauce, just dipped in ratchet sauce. And it's like, why? But, I suppose we'll just find an excuse for that too, right? We can't find an excuse for Ma'Khia, but we can find an excuse for ratchetry. All right. So yeah, again, Ma'Khia's father was there, right? Y'all, the folks who love to push black Kangs, the black Kang was there. And I ain't seen no Kangly things being done. I didn't see that. I seen that black Kang kick that girl in her head. And when Ma'Khia was shot, he said, she's a child, and maybe said, "Is you stupid?" That's about it. He didn't look too concerned. Maybe he was in a state of shock. Maybe it just didn't register to him what actually happened to Ma'Khia until maybe after the situation, perhaps. And really, I'm like, I think on one hand, I do think Ma'Khia Bryant's family would deserve a payout, but on the other hand, it's like, well, who would the money go to? I don't want the money to go to the dad, and that probably is who it would go to. The dad and the mom, I'm like, well, they don't really deserve any money, you know? I mean, that money can go somewhere, not to them. Maybe they can go to our sister or something, like our sisters, you know? And again, like, there's a hierarchy at play that you may not be aware of, but I'm going to point this out though, right? So a hierarchy at play here when it comes to situations like this. So the hierarchy, and I suppose this is probably something I should have mentioned earlier when it came to like prioritizing, but I'll bring it up now. So the hierarchy at play when it comes to a situation like this and prioritizing black issues, it's like black men, black boys, black women, black girls, right? So it's kind of like that's the hierarchy at play, right? Because mind you, had this situation happened, but Ma'Khia Bryant was a boy, but still everyone else was the same, the reaction would be a little bit different, right? It'd be like, oh, them grown women trying to attack that boy. What they trying to attack him for? Oh, they mad because he didn't want them or something. Something like that would be popping off. Y'all know that's how it would go down. Something like that, right? And, it's disheartening because it's seemingly like both black men and black women seem to adhere to this hierarchy in one way or another. Not every single person, but enough people, right? And also, just an FYI for the black women out there who be thinking, I'm pro-black, I'm down for the black kind, the black community, black power, wonderful. But the thing is, the pro-black agenda will not save you, black woman. Sandra Bland, Corinne Gaines, both of them were on some pro-black stuff when they lost their life. They were both pro-black, right? And if you want to add a colorism aspect to this, Sandra Bland was like a brown, dark skin or darker skinned black woman, and Corinne Gaines was more so a lighter skinned black woman. Both of them still lost their lives, and also both of them did not receive advocacy, or not really as strong advocacy. Yeah, people cared. I think there were some people who cared. I don't think just no one didn't care, but there was also victim blaming, right? Just as we see in this situation with Ma'Khia. Victim blaming, that is a theme too, right? Just as non-black people, especially white people, blame and victim blame black men for getting into situations, right? It's something that they could have done, right? Something, right? Oh, you should have complied. Oh, you complied. Oh, well, you shouldn't have been sagging your pants. Oh, well, shouldn't have been wearing that do-rag, right? Something, right? You look like a criminal, right? And it's pretty much the same concept, but just applied to black women, right? Some way to blame black women for the situations that they get into. And not to say that the women are not completely, not to say that they have no fault, and that they don't deserve to have some sort of accountability. But the thing is, though, it's like, well, even when some of the black men are wrong, they can still get some accountability. It's like some sort of a push for justice, right? And for Ma'Khia, in her case, I just don't see that being pushed. It's more so like, well, you deserve what happened to you because you had a kitchen knife and you were trying to attack someone with a kitchen knife, right? And again, I mentioned this earlier in the video, but like, accountability it's odd to hear, especially coming from this community, because it's like, well, y'all defend black male degenerates and criminals all the time, right? Especially these rappers. It's a whole music genre that glorifies like criminality. Not to say all rap does, but enough of it, right? And also, um, when it comes to black women, I apologize. I'm kind of like all over the place with this, but it's just like it's coming to me. I've written some notes and some talking points down, but I'm like, there's some other things that are coming to me too that I kind of just feel compelled to speak on, right? But I mean, y'all remember what happened to Megan Thee Stallion a while ago, right? And how people treated her, right? And again, like Megan Thee Stallion, she is a celebrity. She does have some hit records. She isn't just quote unquote the normal black woman, right? But still, notice how she was treated when she came forth and said that she was shot. First, she said that, first, she wasn't even really speaking on it, but then she came out and said, like, initially she was like, oh, I stepped on glass. And then it was like, oh, well, I was shot. And then it was like, oh, Tory Lanez shot me, right? And along each step of the way, folks were like pressing Megan, like, hey, what happened? Oh, you really didn't step on glass. Someone shot you. What happened? Who shot you? And then she named names. It's like, oh, you named names. You shouldn't have been naming names. This should have been kept in private, right? And it wasn't like people didn't approach the situation once they found out that Tory Lanez was involved in some sort of way, like, oh, well, why did Tory do that? It was like, oh, well, what did Megan do to provoke Tory to do that? Allegedly. Notice that. Notice how the dynamics switched up now, right? Because Megan is coming forth as the victim, but now she's getting treated as if she somehow brought it on herself. Like, that's how people were approaching it. And in this situation with Micaiah, it's sort of the same thing. It's like she brought it on herself, right? Even though folks was coming at her, coming to her, attack her, right? But yeah, notice though, so again, you can be a celebrity black woman. You can be a pro-black woman. You can be the biggest mammy out here, the biggest mule, the biggest pick-me too. But you're going to get it too. It's just not your turn right now. But it's going to come to you. And the thing is, when you participate in perpetuating clownery, buffoonery, it comes back to clown you. And it's going to come back in a way you don't really expect, and you won't see it coming. It'll catch you by surprise, right? And, we're speaking on accountability, right? I haven't really seen the usual suspects pushing the police to be held accountable for any of this. Not nearly as much, right? It's like, well, he ain't really had no choice. Well, maybe, you don't know. You wasn't there. And that's true. We don't know. Maybe he didn't have true. But, and to be fair, I'll be fair and say, hey, put yourself in the police officer's shoes, right? Because a lot of people are saying, well, put yourself in the shoes of the woman who Micaiah was lunging at. Even though they're not saying put yourself in Micaiah's shoes either. All right, that's something else that needs to be touched on. But put yourself in the police officer's shoes. You were called here to de-escalate a situation. Oddly enough, I think there were some cops already on the scene already. I'm not sure what they were doing exactly. They didn't really seem to be active on the scene. But the cops were called generally on the scene to de-escalate the situation. the cops were called by Micaiah, from what I heard. And they came here and they're trying to de-escalate the situation. They did see a whole bunch of buffoonery happening and ratchetry happening, and and then you see a knife, and he stopped Micaiah from attacking. So is this cop a hero, or is this cop a villain? Because a lot of people are saying, oh, this cop is a hero, because they're putting themselves in the shoes of the 29-year-old grown woman who went there to attack a 16-year-old girl, because I guess they can relate to that, because that's how they get down, I guess. But they couldn't really sympathize with, say, Micaiah in this situation, who would be the underdog in this situation, and put themselves in her shoes. And, well, what if two grown women were attacking you or trying to attack you? What would you do? Right? And I think Micaiah had the right idea of calling the cops. I think that was a good decision to do, or to make. Unfortunately, I felt like, perhaps Micaiah should have just let the cops handle it, but we don't know what else was going on there. There were some other situations at play there too. But again, Micaiah called the cops, and she was treated as the victimizer instead of the victim. So that is unfortunate. And sadly, I don't really see this situation really resulting in justice for Micaiah. And even if there was justice for Micaiah in some way, at least in like a payout, it's like, well, who would the money go to? Because I really don't think the money should be going to her foster parents, her biological parents, perhaps her sisters, But yeah, so it's like, what, like, either way, it's just going, like, it's not really a win, like, per se. But I would say if Micaiah gets some justice in some way, I suppose it could be a win for, like, black women, and that's important. But yeah, put yourself in Micaiah's shoes and put yourself in the police officer's shoes too, And then there are some talks about, could the police officer have handled the situation differently and de-escalated the situation differently? Perhaps. The thing is, I don't know, like, what were the cops doing before all that happened? Because they didn't really seem really active on the scene for some reason. And based on the footage that I've seen, I think that there was like he had to act fast. I'll say that in his defense. He had to act fast in order to prevent something like that from happening. Was 4 shots excessive? Perhaps. Maybe he didn't think that 1 shot was enough. And people are saying that these officers are trained to shoot to kill, not to shoot to wound, right? And then there's the whole argument about, well, what about how the police officers handle white people with weapons and who are violent towards them, like directly them, right? And that is an argument that definitely needs to be had. That is a discussion that needs to be had, definitely. Because, that's not fair and that's not right either. But I do think that is another video for another day. Right now, I'm more concerned at the moment with how black people are treating Micaiah, right? We already know non-black folks and white folks ain't crap. All right, we know that, right? Especially when situations like this happen. We know that the majority of them, by and large, ain't ish. All right. But when it comes to black people, I expect more. I have higher expectations for black people. No. But before I go, I do want to speak on a couple more things. I'll say this. Candace Owens ain't no friend to no black woman. All right. Ain't no friend to no black women at all. No black people at all. She is a friend to her bag. All right. Because some people, particularly some black women, were a bit taken aback by how Candace Owens was reacting to this situation and basically blaming Ma'Khia, right? Going in on Ma'Khia. And again, Candace Owens, she's just concerned about her money, her bag. She ain't concerned about trying to uplift the black woman in her image, in her state, you know, her status in this country or community or whatever, right? Nah. Then LeBron James, he got some backlash because he posted a very short tweet saying of a picture of the cop that shot Ma'Khia, saying like, you're next, hashtag accountability, something to do with like the George Chauvin verdict, and saying like, basically, we gonna get you next. And then folks coming at LeBron James saying that he ain't right for doing this, and that this is dangerous, and that they gonna boycott the NBA in Cleveland now. All of a sudden, everyone can galvanize and boycott the NBA, the NBA, but they can't galvanize to boycott bad, corrupt cops and call out biases. Our bias, right? So it's interesting what folks can come together on. That's really interesting what people can come together and come through and galvanize for, right? And then LeBron James, he took down the tweet, and some people saying he shouldn't have took down the tweet, and I kind of agree with that. But he may have been having some people behind the scenes telling him to take down the tweet to avoid more issues or whatever. But the thing is, the tweet is already out there, though. It's already out there. So to an extent, you might as well just keep it up, because folks gonna keep referencing the screenshot of the tweet, right? But yeah, notice that folks are really, folks really got a reaction. Folks can really come together and talk about some stuff and, boycott and stuff all of a sudden, right? And, where was all this? Y'all remember when George Floyd, that situation first happened, and how everybody was, against police brutality and against racism and all that stuff. Yeah. Y'all remember when all that happened? Back then I was calling BS, but y'all remember when all that happened. But now we see that was just a little fad, a little trend that has died down and gone away. All right, now it's back to business as usual, as you see. All right. But yeah, y'all remember when folks were coming out there protesting, getting some selfies in so they can post on Twitter like, oh, I'm so woke, what's up? Hashtag Black Lives Matter, etc. Right? So yeah. But I'm going to bring this video to a close. Sorry for going on for so long. Sorry for kind of like the video being kind of like a bit all over the place. But, I just felt compelled to speak on some things. And it was just a bit difficult to organize it. That's all. But thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.